Hello there. If you're watching this via replay, doing a little bit of, you know, pre-broadcast hangout. The broadcast has technically started, but also kind of also not started, right? So I just came on a little bit early, talked to folks in the comments. So if you're watching this via replay, you can fast forward about, man, I don't know, 7 minutes. Okay. So replay, fast forward 7 minutes. Because I'm not going to be saying anything yet. I'm just here to say hi to folks that are here live. So if you're coming in live, say hello. Say hello. I want to interact with you. My friend, pastor, mentor, leader, Jennifer Hollingsworth is here in the comments. Good morning, morning Melissa. Good morning Amanda. Good morning Brian. Who else is here? Good morning, you guys. We're just kind of like doing a. Just good morning, Lisa. Just like I hate to call it pre-service, because I don't like to think of Existential as a service. But for some people, it's church. So it's just like, I got my coffee here for our pre-service hangout time. For those of you that got here early to get your seat. What's up, Sharon? Good morning. By the way, I don't normally drink coffee. And I actually don't always. I usually drink coffee if I drink coffee, I'll drink out of my Jerusalem mug. But today I got my St. Louis mug. Shout out to all of you who are in the St. Louis area. Yeah, right. I don't, I'm not normally this chill, and I don't normally have coffee. What's up, Don? Good morning, Shell. Good morning, Michon. Is that how you say the name? Michon. I'm sorry that I really feel awful when I don't know how to say someone's name. So this morning, I normally drink like a little shot of black coffee. Should be no surprise that I don't put any cream in my coffee. And I had like these. Of course, I'm playing golf this week. I have these little cups that I put the coffee in. And we have like these pods, and I never know which pod is just a little shot and which pod is like a full thing. So I almost made an entire mess this morning, but my St. Louis mug saved me because I was able to, keep from making a mess today. Morning, Megan. I said it right. See? I'm glad then. Thank you. Michonne. Okay. There you go. All right. Well, I still got 5 minutes before I really need to do a whole intro to Existential. But I mean, I guess I could start doing an intro now. But I wanted to hang out with y'all this morning before I go into this pretty. I don't know. This would be a pretty interesting one, I think. Sing. I don't have anything to sing. I didn't do a singing warm up. Somebody asked me not too long ago to come lead worship at their church. My guy Shane, sick invite to the Grand Canyon. Somebody asked me not too long ago to come lead worship, and I almost did, and then I thought I'm not sure I still know how to do that. I mean, it's like riding a bike. Of course, I could strap a guitar on and play and sing, but I think being in that space again, it even right now my heart's racing a little bit. It almost made me feel nervous to think about getting on a stage and welcoming people in and singing. Yeah, Nandi would definitely have to be here if I was going to sing, and they would be very, very disappointed if I sang and didn't tell them that I was doing it. So we're not going to sing. Plus, I wake everybody up. My guy Rose here, man. It's nice that I can, when I'm actually live, that I can come out here and say hey to y'all in real time. Some of my favorite people in the world are in here today. Jermaine, what's up? Good morning. All right, so let me do an intro because I got 3 minutes till 9. Y'all are here. If you want to hit the share button, you can share. Go ahead and share this with folks. especially with the Christians. Like all the Enneagram 8s, all right? If you're an Enneagram 8, share this broadcast right now. Good morning, Monique. All right, I'm about to go away from the comments, and what up, Ross? And I'll come back by later and say hi to all of you. I'm gonna intro this as if I'm starting from the beginning. Okay, quiet on the set in 3, 2, 1. What's up, folks, and welcome to Existential Sunday. If you are watching this via replay, which is most of you, I asked you to fast forward because I was hanging out with folks. So you fast forwarded to this moment where it's the intro. If we don't know each other, my name is Corey, and I am a husband and father, speaker. I guess I'm still a writer, though I haven't written anything in a long time, podcast host. And every week I do this live broadcast called Existential Sunday, which is a space for any of us that are interested in decolonizing or deconstructing our worldview or our way of seeing things, that like we are, we feel a sense of freedom to question stuff. Which, by the way, this week I talked to Robert Munson on the podcast, and we actually talk about that very thing. It's one of my favorite conversations. If you're a part of the Patreon, it's available to you now in the Patreon. Maybe you've already heard it. Oh my God, I love it so much. So this week, I'm looking forward to you guys hearing the conversation I had with Robert Munson. Also, real quick, for all of you who are part of the Patreon community, we have our Zoom call coming up Wednesday. I said Wednesday this week. I need to move it to Monday because I did not realize Gabby has a volleyball game. Okay, so I'm not meeting with you on Wednesday. I'll meet with you on Monday. All right, so I'll make sure I update you on that though. Okay. Whew. This coffee got me gassed. All right. Which is what I needed. I needed to be gassed. Let me put it down. Where can I put the coffee? I'll put it back here just in case I need to get back to it. Okay. Whew. Today, oh man, I want to talk about some things. All right. Because a lot has happened and is happening in the world. We just had earlier this week a verdict that felt historic, but that also felt grievous. A verdict I had mixed emotions on. And I talked about those mixed emotions on last week's episode of Existential, the podcast. So if you probably heard me talk about it. And since I've seen a lot of people kind of expressing, especially Black folks, expressing these mixed emotions about the verdict. I've heard from the abolitionist crowd, the reform and reimagining of how we dole out justice. One of Andre Henry actually put it perfectly, like, as an abolitionist, how could I ever celebrate anybody going to prison? So there's that tension. And then there's the tension that is, yes, Derek Chauvin was found guilty and Derek Chauvin is going to prison. But yes, also the very same day, there was another incident where a Black life was snuffed out too soon, violently, at the hands of people who were supposed to serve and protect her. And I will say her name, Ma'Khia Bryant. Her life matters. So I say all that to say that what I want us to talk about today, what I want to say today, is really important, because there are a couple of things that exist, ideas that exist in the ethos of what it is to be in the United States, especially a person with some sort of religious orientation. I'll just say straightforward Christian orientation. There are some ideas that keep us from being able to actually engage in what's happening in the world in a way that's actually helpful. And let me say a couple things before I get to these two things. One is that it's so important that we interrogate all of our ideas all the time, especially the ideas that have to do with who lives and who dies. Like, in matters of actual life and death, it's really important that we interrogate the ideas behind the thing, the idea behind policing, the idea behind religion, behind things that we believe, because if we don't interrogate them and if we don't have permission to interrogate them, that's a red flag to me. That is actually why this space exists, because there are so many spaces, especially spaces of faith or spirituality, where the interrogation of long held beliefs is not allowed. And it's part of the reason why I find myself so often wanting to like avoid the label of Christian, or like why I have such a complicated, conflicted relationship with the idea of Christianity. Is because of so much of Christianity has taken this very arrogant stance that is to say, we have the market cornered on spirituality and all things divine. And no one else has anything of value to add to the conversation or to the ideas that we have about the Creator, about God, about life, about the world. And even within Christianity, which is a small slice of the whole world, there are these even smaller sects, not SECTS, not the other one. Just keep going. There are these even smaller tribes and groups of people that like think that they have it even spirituality even more cornered than the other Christians do. And I find myself wanting to distance myself from that because I don't think it helps the world. All right. So let me get to these two ideas. All right. The first one, the first idea that I think keeps us from the kind of better world that, which is a relative term, but this kind of better world that we're contending for, is the mythology of the afterlife. Now, I know that there are lots of Christians watching this who would say, who you may turn it off now just because I call it because I talk about the afterlife and use the term mythology. But the reality is, and I think that if we are being intellectually honest, none of us can say that we know for certain what is on the other side of us closing our eyes forever. We don't. You just don't. And if you are a person who takes the Bible seriously, it is you'll be hard pressed to find some of the modern ideas about heaven and hell in the Bible. Like I remember not too long ago, myself and I think some people that are watching, at least hopefully they're watching, we set out to plant a church or start a church. And you may have seen me talking about Merseyside or seen people in the comments talking about Merseyside. This was a church, the idea I had was to plant a church. I wanted to do something that I wanted to do something and create a space that allowed people to wrestle with their ideas about God and each other. And I thought at the time the best space for that was a church. And so we set out to plant a church, and I was driving about an hour from where I live to go to this church planters training with a couple of other, well, they're all white actually, with a bunch of white church leaders. And the person who was leading it would always say this phrase about why church. He would say that I think the first part was heaven is real, but I know that the second part was and hell is hot. And that sort of, again, afterlife thinking was what drove this person to do church, to engage in the community, really the political community activity that organized church religion is. That was the driving force. And for so many of folks within the evangelical space, evangelical church, that is what drives them. It is, we want to get as many people into heaven as possible and keep as many people as possible from going to hell, because hell is hot and awful and torturous. And I remember back in the day when I was a person who believed in a vengeful God that would put people in hell forever and leave them there for not believing some things during a very tiny lifespan. I remember like thinking and even saying to people, because I like to debate the hell thing with all the heathens. I remember saying to people that, like, if I am wrong about hell, I don't really lose anything. If ultimately there is no hell, I don't lose anything by believing in it. But if you're wrong, you go there forever and burn. And I get the logic of it. It sounds right. Sounds good. But as I've gotten older and like thought about it differently, I have different thoughts about the notion of hell. And to be honest with you, what I think now and have said more often than not is, if there is indeed, like, if the mythology of the afterlife with this binary of heaven and hell is actually true, then we're all effed. I do not have the courage yet. I shouldn't say courage. Maybe it is courage to actually say the F word live. My mom still watches Existential Sunday sometimes, so I'm definitely not going to do that. But that's how I feel about it, right? That, like, if God is ultimately, with all of the ideas that there are about life, our lifespan being a vapor, and us being so much infinitely less evolved, less conscious than the creator, us stumbling through the dark of our lifetime, we miss the mark of it, all of the beliefs, and don't check all the boxes we need to check. We will forever burn in an ever never-ending fire. Yeah, if that's God, if God has that within them, we are all screwed. And imagine this for a moment. Imagine, like, yesterday, we were talking with one of our daughters, and she's a huge Warriors fan, but also has a lot of homework she's behind on. Julie told her earlier this week that if you're still behind on your homework, you're not going in this game. And so yesterday, it's looking like she still might be behind her homework. And so we offered the ticket to her sister. And Morgan thought that if her sister took the ticket, knowing how badly she wants to go to the game, that is somewhat of a betrayal to her, which is a really interesting idea, right? Like, and as I think about heaven, hell, the mythology of the afterlife, what would have to happen to my thoughts, my emotional state in the afterlife for me to enjoy a bliss while others are suffering forever? Like, imagine being in love with a person who has people chained up in their basement, being tortured. But here on the level that you're on, the floor that you're on, the space that you live in, there's nothing but love and kindness and goodness. What kind of person do you have to be to, like, still cling to that person who is good to you, but awful to the people in the basement? And I think that this is the complexity that I have with this whole notion of the afterlife. And let me get to the point about why I feel that this keeps us from contending for a better world. Because when the urgency is about keeping people from going to hell and getting people into heaven, what does that do to how we think about what's happening here and now? No wonder so many churches and Christians find it hard to get behind ideas like this, because Black lives don't matter in heaven or hell. Black is an earthly construct. Police, earthly construct. Over there, on the other side, we don't have race and racism and evil and all these other sorts of things. So let's just focus on that and get people there and not really be so concerned about what's happening here. and now? Who cares if the planet is under siege from our fossil fuel and our way of living and being and our footprint on the planet? Who cares if it's deteriorating? Because this is not our home anyway. Who cares if Ma'Khia Bryant was shot by the police? Who cares if Derek Chauvin is guilty or innocent? Because this is not our home. And this way of thinking, this there, some other time, it is all that matters. It prevents people from getting their hands dirty here and now to do the work that's necessary to bring about the change that's necessary to have the conversations and interrogate the ideas in ways that are actually helpful for society, like talking about what's happening now. I love, love, love the fact that our friend Melissa and the Mennonites are hardcore wrestling with the notion of abolishing the police. They have a whole curriculum where they're wrestling with the idea. I love it because that's what's happening here and now. The conversation that's happening right now in the world is about how Black folks are policed, how Black folks are treated. We are wrestling with the marginalization and oppression of people who are not white. This is it's a conversation happening everywhere. When you turn on your television this week, no matter what you were watching, if it was happening live in real time, if it was news, if it was sports, hell, if it was weather, somebody was going to talk about the Derek Chauvin trial, the verdict, except for many of your places of worship, because it didn't matter, because it wasn't heaven or hell. Second one that I'll spend less time on, then I'm gonna get out of here and let you guys go about your Sunday. The second thing that is super detrimental to contending for a better world, the second religious idea comes from it's a relatively modern idea, like the last 100 years or so, and it's this term that is very common in Christian evangelical space. It's the fall of man. It is the idea that every human being walking the face of the planet is a wretched, broken, evil person by nature because of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. People who take that story literally and then believe that our nature is to be evil rather than to be good. What's interesting about that is that, I mean, it's undeniable, all right? It's not arguable that the account of creation in the book of Genesis is a poem. Like whether you are a person who takes the story literally, that like this is a poem that is telling us exactly what happened with Adam and Eve, fine, if that's what you choose to believe. But it's a poem. Let's start there. This is a poem. This is literature that was written to communicate a message about the nature of humanity, and positioned in its time, positioned amongst the other literature of the day. When this was written, it is positioned amongst a bunch of other stories about human beings and divine beings, and a moment where human beings grasp for something that is too big for them to hold, would be the moral of the story for the original readers of that. But recently, like I said, in the last 100 years or so, we've adopted this mentality that story is to communicate to us about the nature of man and that we have all fallen. And this especially harms. Why did I put a ULE on especially? Did you hear that? I said especially. That was dumb. Especially harms people of color. Because, I mean, just think about it. Whenever you see this, Black Lives Matter, or that Black Lives Matter today and tomorrow, or you see the hashtag, or you see somebody talking about it, inevitably, we don't speak of, and a bunch of other white folks will bring up Chicago. or black on black crime. Whenever we are talking about universal health care, like that people's ability to have access to health care is a human right. Whenever Dr. King started talking about a universal income, a basic minimum income for every person, regardless of their status, where they live, what they can do, work or not work, that everyone has access to resources that they need. What we hear is that people will take advantage of it. You hear people complaining about the ways in which we as a society help those who are poor with subsidized housing or government aid for food. And we hear things like, those folks are too lazy to work. I don't like that I don't like that system because people will take advantage of it. And that is rooted in the belief that fundamentally human beings are evil. But even more so, folks, in the United States, that Black people are evil. Not too long ago, oh gosh, what did I forgot what I said. I said something somewhere on some social media platform. Or Existential did. I don't remember who said it. Somebody said something. Oh gosh, Corey, I wish you could remember it. You need to remember it. Come on, please get it. Whatever. I said something, right, along the lines of like race. And some white man in the comments literally said something along the lines of it's not safe for white people to walk the streets in Compton. And I've heard this sentiment my whole life. Like, I've heard white people talking about driving through the wrong neighborhood. And that just by the very sheer nature of them being white, making a wrong turn in Oakland or some areas of Los Angeles or whatever it always seems to be the west side of town, whatever the west side of town is where you live, you hear white people talking about not going there because they fear for their lives. Because the very nature of the people who live there is that they are broken, evil people who will kill and rape and loot and rob you at a moment's notice. And that kind of bullshit keeps you from having compassion for people who live in poverty. Let me remind you, I don't remember who said it. You guys can put in the comments who said it. I want to give credit to the person who said this, especially if this person was a Black woman. I don't remember who said it, but it is that, let me remind you that poverty is the father of crime. People living in squalor, people living in pushed out into the margins and put in extreme situations, people put in desperate situations, you in a desperate situation, me in a desperate situation. Who among us would not do whatever we had to do to survive? Whatever we felt we needed to do to survive. So this idea that people over there are just wicked, evil people by nature, they need Jesus. The white evangelical church goes. Okay, so let me back up for a second. Okay, so let me. I don't even know if this is on point, but this is where my mind is, so I'm going to stay with it. With the invention of the automobile, I think I told you guys this before. The invention of the automobile, people stopped working in the city and started, because they could drive from outside of the city into the city to work, which is the beginning of the suburbs. And with the suburbs came churches that were in communities where there were poor people who needed their help. They moved out to the suburbs where people were who had the money and influence to help fund the church. And so now today, look at where most of your mega churches are. They are not in urban settings. They are somewhere outside of the city. They're in the suburbs. They are in communities of affluence, serving places and communities of affluence, distant from those people. And now, over the last 15, 20 years, these churches then go back into the inner city to do charity work, to do one-off charity work. We're going to put a community center. We're going to help build a community center in the inner city so that Black and brown kids have a safe place to go. I'm not saying it's not a great cause. What I'm saying is that there is distance between Jesus in the suburbs and folks who live in poverty, in squalor, in more urban settings. And this, again, hear me when I say this, those folks are depraved and without Jesus, and that's why they're so evil, and that's why there's so much crime, and that's why there's so much stuff happening, because what they need is Jesus. They don't need better schools or better food or better resources or less militarized police in their communities. What they need is these ideas that we have about Jesus. What they need is to realize that this earth is not their home, and that though they're poor right now, though they don't have right now, over there where the streets are gold and where there's these big giant mansions, when they get there, God's going to take care of them. But in the meantime, poor Black and brown kids, poor Black and brown families. We don't want a system. We don't want a way of being. We don't want Marxism or socialism where there are ideas that help take care of people. We don't want that. We just want you to have Jesus. We don't want you to have better. We don't want you to have what we have out here by our church, in our community. We want you to have Jesus. And that's enough. And somewhere Jesus is like, no. That ain't really what I was talking about. You know, I imagine sometimes the image of Jesus, rather than it being like this blonde-haired, blue-eyed Captain America looking Jesus with, you know, the slender face and the beard, I imagine Jesus looking like Kanye West with, you know, the gif of Kanye shaking his head. That's probably more an accurate image of Jesus looking at the way the church in the United States has carried forward the message. Is more this. Nah. To say that they need Jesus, or that anyone needs Jesus, absent of care for their humanity and their basic needs, is not valuable in any way. Spiritually, it's not spiritually valuable. It is not materially valuable. It's not mentally, psychologically valuable. It has no value whatsoever to run around talking about these abstract ideas about what it means to be spiritual and good while ignoring the issues, the ideas, the people that need our attention. And yes, I do think that having these kinds of conversations and dialogues, and hopefully, folks, if you've not shared it, you share this. I want you to share it so that people get upset with you and want to have a dialogue with you. That would be great. If you share this and people are like, what? I can't believe, oh my gosh, he didn't use a single scripture to back up any good. That's fine. Like y'all engage those folks in conversation. I'm not engaging them. I'm not. Well, I take it back. I might have to engage some of them. I'm related to some of them probably. But you know what I'm saying. Let me wrap this thing up. I'm going to do some kind of like benediction today. Yeah, I'm going to do a benediction. Whether you believe in God as a person, or God as an idea, or God as a construct to help us feel better about the utter insanity that is human consciousness. May the divine creator, ultimate goodness, follow you wherever you go this week. Be with you in your work, in your school, in your parenting, in your domestic relationships. May a sense of justice and peace and love and goodness be with all of you until we meet again. Grace and peace. Until next time.